In this video, we see about hydrodissection, cortical aspiration, lens delivery, and insertion. Prior to beginning the hydrodissection, posterior lip of main incision is compressed so as to remove the small amount of visco material from the eye. This is a step forward towards creating a space for fluid wave to make its way in the eye while performing hydrodissection. Failure to do so may often lead to overinflation of eye with fluid and may often eventually lead to increased pressure and posterior capsular rupture. Following completion of capsular rhexis margin edge is lifted with tip of the cannula, which is then inserted beneath the edge of the capsule. Fluid is injected gently, which is seen passing circumferentially along the capsule. This ensures that adequate cleavage is achieved between capsule and cortex. So here, cannula is passed between the capsulorhexis margin and cortical matter of the lens. And we have to gently inject the fluid, which is seen passing circumferentially in the posterior side. Here, progression of fluid wave will be seen. As the fluid wave passes along the posterior aspect of the lens, entrapment of fluid occurs between capsule and lens. If the fluid injection is continued, then fluid crosses the entire posterior aspect of the lens and it emanates from all around the margin of rhexis. This leads to prolapse of lens into the anterior chamber, which is desirable situation for SICS, and in supracapsular phacoemulsification. The flat portion of cannula can be used to decompress the lens complex, forcing posteriorly entrapped fluid to come around the equator of the lens and rupture cortical capsular connection. So once adequate cortical dissection has been achieved, fluid injection is continued without decompressing the bag until one part of the equator of the nucleus is forced out of the capsular bag. The purpose of continued injection of fluid is to increase hydrostatic pressure within the bag to pop out the nucleus. So it is essential to maintain the flat portion of the cannula parallel with the anterior capsule. The tip of the cannula should be extended peripherally to allow for adequate anterior capsular coverage, ensuring proper posterior delivery of the fluid. So J-shaped cannula also available for injection at the sub-incision site. Also, a cannula with long shaft facilitates the reach of the cannula at the distal capsulorhexis margin. So, if this is the site code, we have to do hydrodissection at multiple places. This is one and this and this. This is correct technique. So tips: always perform multi-quadrant hydrodissection. Place the cannula beneath the edge of the anterior capsule after tenting it up and slowly inject the fluid in a well-controlled manner. Repeat hydrodissection in case of non-visualization of the fluid wave or in case of inadequate nucleus rotation. To avoid capsular block syndrome, the amount of fluid injection must be titrated and anterior chamber must not be overfilled with visco. In dense, bulky nucleus, having too much space in the capsular bag must be avoided. Therefore, gentle hydrodissection is preferred. Successful hydrodissection will be evident through visualization of propagating posterior wave. If wave is not evident after continuous irrigation for a brief period, stop injecting and redirect the cannula into a new position for repeat attempt. Next is hydrodelineation. So hydrodelineation is done to separate endonucleus from epinucleus to prevent the fluid from the cannula from going between the capsule and the cortex, which was already performed during the hydrodissection. Here, tip of the cannula should be placed within the edge of the capsulorhexis and not beyond it. So, tip of the cannula should be within the edge of the capsulorhexis, whereas hydrodissection we are passing beneath the capsule. So dig the tip of the cannula into the nuclear material while keeping it within the confines of 5 mm of capsulorhexis. So this will allow proper hydrodelineation and a successful fluid wave will result in the golden ring appearance at the area of separation. So here we are digging and fluid is injected between the nucleus and cortex or epinucleus, and we will see the golden ring here. Hydroprolapse. After performing adequate sized capsulorhexis and hydrodissection cannula is passed under the anterior capsule perpendicular to the capsulorhexis margin and bolus of fluid is injected. Is forceful hydrodissection. This lifts up the pole of the nucleus on the opposite side out of the capsular bag. Once one pole of the nucleus is maneuvered out of the bag, the remaining part of the nucleus can be prolapsed into the AC by rotating the nucleus anteriorly and out of the bag. The nucleus may be tied levered out of the bag using same cannula or a Sinskey hook. This is ideal for prolapsing soft nucleus which cannot be easily prolapsed with Sinskey hook. Main advantage is that it requires large sized capsulorhexis. The same technique can be employed for prolapsing any type of nucleus. A harder nucleus may need a larger capsulorhexis and the nucleus may be reduced in size by hydrodelineation before hydroprolapse is attempted. So hydrodissection cannula should be passed between capsule margin and cortex, and forceful injection of fluid will result in hydroprolapse of one end of the nucleus. So this will be prolapsed into the anterior chamber. Next is viscoprolapse. One pole of the nucleus can be prolapsed by injecting 2% HPMC under the capsulorhexis near the capsular fornix. This technique is similar to hydroprolapse and useful for soft cataract. Prerequisites is adequate pupillary dilation and adequate size of capsulorhexis. Next, prolapsing the nucleus into the anterior chamber by single hook method. After thorough hydrodissection and delineation, the anterior chamber inflated with dispersive like HPMC. Sinskey hook is passed through the main incision and center of the nucleus is felt with the hook, which is then taken up to the equator of the nucleus, tracing the surface of the nucleus. Once the equator is reached, Sinskey hook is passed into the surrounding epinucleus or cortex. The pole of the nucleus is lifted out of the capsule and cartwheeled anteriorly and out of the bag till the entire nucleus comes into the AC. This procedure may be difficult in small rigid pupils and small capsulorhexis or when the zonules are weak. So, after taking the Sinskey into the equator of the nucleus, Sinskey hook is passed into the surrounding epinucleus or cortex. The pole of the nucleus here is lifted out of the capsule. So, pole of the nucleus is here lifted out of the capsule. Next is nucleus delivery. The nucleus is subluxated into the anterior chamber, which is then filled with copious amount of visco. Next, floor of the tunnel is depressed with the vectis held in the left hand. Superior pole of the nucleus gets engaged in the tunnel. Some more OVD is injected under the nucleus, which pushes the iris back, that is bed sheathing of the iris. The vectis is then carefully advanced under the nucleus so that tip appears on the opposite side anterior to the iris, thereby ensuring the iris is not caught between the vectis and nucleus. The vectis is slightly depressed posteriorly to create more space in the anterior chamber. Some more OVD is pushed between nucleus and endothelium. Now, Sinskey hook in the right hand is introduced into the AC over the nucleus. The hook is pressed against the nucleus to sandwich the nucleus between it and vectis. Drawback of this procedure is that tunnel size may have to be increased if the nucleus is large. Once nucleus is extracted, epinucleus can be extracted with ISCO expression. So before delivering the nucleus, we have to press the floor of the tunnel to deliver the visco in the anterior chamber. Next, vectis carefully advance under the nucleus until it appears on the opposite side of the nucleus anterior to the iris. Then we insert Sinskey to sandwich the nucleus between Vectis and Sensky. Cortical aspiration. Once the anterior chamber is free of nucleus and epinucleus, chamber is again reformed with viscoelastic and cortical cleanup is begun. This step needs to be done with utmost gentleness and care. Some surgeons prefer use 5cc or 2cc syringe with cannula filled with BSS to irrigate the cortical matter before removal. This helps to loosen the cortex from the capsule and facilitate easy removal. This can be done through main incision or paracentesis. During the small incision cataract surgery, best available tool for cortical cleanup is Simcoe cannula. The most accessible parts of the eye are tackled first, such as inferior 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock. So, side port at 3 o'clock helps in aspirating the cortex from 9 o'clock region. And 3 o'clock region can be accessed via the superior main port if one is operating from superior incision. The side port not only helps to reform the chamber at the end of the surgery but also helps to aspirate the cortex from subincisional region. Alternatively, J-shaped cannula can also be used for removal of subincisional cortical matter. Cortical material is loosely adherent, covering around the nucleus and epinucleus, and it consists of two leaves with the body adherent to the fornix of the back. The principle of cortex removal is to gain purchase of anterior leaf of the cortex and tear it away from the capsule in such a manner that it peels off from the rest of the capsule. Traditional teaching has been to gently tear the anterior cortex perpendicularly to the center of the eye away from the fornix of the capsular bag. Idea being 60 to 90 degrees of cortex is removed in one attempt. One quadrant of cortex should be removed in one attempt. Once the anterior leaf of the cortex is held, side-to-side motion of the Simcoe cannula helps in stripping the cortex from the capsule. A more efficient method would be to gain the purchase of the anterior leaf of the cortex and pull downward towards the posterior capsule but not towards the center of the eye, gently tearing the cortex away from the anterior capsule and in this way not putting too much stress on the zonules in the periphery of the capsular bag. This technique is very useful in eyes with pseudo-exfoliation syndrome and eyes with angle closure glaucoma and inherent weakness of the zonules. Once we hold the tip of the anterior capsule, we have to slightly move the Simcoe cannula side to side, which helps in stripping of the cortex from the capsule. Next is IOL insertion. Using forceps, inject additional viscoelastic to inflate the capsular bag and anterior chamber. Hold the trailing haptic near the tip and move it to the 3 o'clock position by folding the haptic over the optic. So the haptic is depressed and released below the capsular margin. This is accomplished by surgeons abducting the arm and pronating the forearm more while placing the haptic into the bag. This maneuver is more suitable for multi-piece IOL. So here we are seeing the insertion of IOL. Next is using the Sinskey hook. This step can be done through the main tunnel or through the side port. If maneuvering through the main tunnel, one has to be aware that viscoelastic may leak out, which can lead to shallow anterior chamber. IOLs with a dialing hole can be easily dilated into the bag by placing the Sinskey hook in the dialing hole and rotating the IOL with downward movement for 2 to 3 clock hours, preferably from 3 o'clock to 6 o'clock hours. IOL without a dialing hole can also be dialed using the Sinskey hook. Here, Sinskey hook is positioned at optic haptic junction and rotated to 3 o'clock hour over the iris and then rotated with a downward movement aiming the optic haptic junction to go under the rexis, which will eventually take the whole haptic inside. So here the surgeon's forearm position has to change from pronation to little supination. Care should be taken to inflate the bag with viscoelastic so that the Sinskey hook will not tear the posterior capsule. So with Sinskey hook we are dialing the optic via dialing hole. Here lens is positioned in the back.